And it's Messi! It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
It's a very good evening, Zimbabwe. It's a Thursday evening, our shortened show, and today we talk about, guess what? Social football. Most of you play it out there, probably have been playing it. Well, there's been a stern warning issued, and we're talking about that and so much more in this edition of ZiFM Sport. On my station, your station. In the house, Mike Madoda, Chris Midzi, our producer Shonta Firinyika, my name, Barry Manandi. We don't try to stand on ceremony around here on Thursdays, so let's get into it.
Hi, I'm Clemens Matau, chicken in midfielder. You're listening to ZiFM Sports.
All right, we're going to hear the thoughts of the in-studio team momentarily, but it's a conversation that can continue on social media. At ZiFM Sport is our handle. At Mike Madoda, at Chris Midzi, at Shonta Firinyika, at Gazaman14, at Mark Pozo, and at Barry Manandi are our individual handles. Now, the story is this. Police have warned that they will pounce, very strong language, on organizers and participants of social football matches which have exploded across the capital despite the game's activities, including training, still under a blanket ban from authorities. The sports club's management, who are giving the green light for such matches to be played on their facilities, also stand liable to prosecution for their violation of COVID-19 regulations. Very strong words coming out of the police, and no doubt they have been endorsed by the Sports and Recreation Commission. And in truth, Mike, you and I, during Sunday drives and Saturday just going around the city, to be fair, these social matches were beginning to burgeon, even though football still remains banned.
I think beginning to burgeon, Barry, is a bit of an understatement. Bora rutambwa, bora rutambwa, bora arina kumbobvira ramira kutambwa. That is a statement of fact. So from the very day that the lockdown was announced, football continued. It continued to be played behind the scenes. Indeed, there were reports, underground. There were reports in the national press. We carried a couple of stories here where a couple of our players in the Premier Soccer League were reported to have been participating in money games. Here in Harare, and a few games also reported in Bulawayo. And no doubt this was a situation that was prevalent in Mutare, in Gweru, in Kwekwe, in Kadoma, in Rusape. Wherever football is played, people continue to play football. Not just the pros from the Council of the Premier Soccer League who are missing game time and of course what they do from 8 to 5 as it were, but also punters like you and I, Barry, who played for fun, who play in the social leagues, and who play with different motivations. So we need to acknowledge the very fact that football has not stopped being played from day one of the lockdown.
So let's dig into that, Chris. If football hasn't stopped being played, and there's such a thing they call in the COVID-19 parlance super spreaders. So there's super spreader events. So a wedding might cause the pandemic to catch fire. If football has been played and we haven't seen or heard anywhere where one of these football matches has become a super spreader, is there no opportunity for the authorities to think to themselves, hang on, perhaps we need to look into this and organize it rather than necessarily stop it? Because in truth, football needs to return given the assignments that the national team has.
Exactly. I think part of the problem, what we're seeing here is that we're not having authorities who are making holistic decisions when it comes to football. There are decisions being made about your Premier League. There are decisions being made possibly maybe around Division 1 and Division 2, but that's not the only areas where football is supposed to be played. And in this COVID era, you'd rather have a situation where there are outlines and regulations around how the game should be played, should there be testing, etc. What you'd rather do is legislate it and have rules around it than to have a situation where, when it comes to situations like social football, where it's being played everywhere, including parks, in the middle of the city, across from police, what do you call them? They're not camps.
We're at Greenwood Park.
Exactly. Whatever that police
across the road from police general headquarters.
There are games being played there, which means the authorities have been well aware of this for a little bit. So you'd rather legislate and have rules around it than to have a situation where now it's being played freely, there are no regulations, and it could become a super spreader event.
I think Chris is a bit generous as well, Barry, when she says that, Division 2, Division 1. As far as I know, football is just being talked about, or the return of football is just being talked about at elite level only. The conversations that I know are taking place are those around the Premier Soccer League. So these guys obviously don't care about the lower divisions. They seemingly don't care about the area zones, about the districts, about social footy, Barry. They don't care whether Barry Menandi gets his fix on a Saturday, is able to get a run out, possibly score a free kick or a penalty here, and then claim that he scored a hat-trick by the water cooler or the coffee machine on a Monday.
Mike, I never lie. I never lie about my hat-tricks. I never lie. I've got the match balls to prove it.
Okay, if only the authorities could have taken a look at what's happening, these underground games, and then asked the question that you asked, to say, you know what, hang on, football is supposed to be one of the spreaders, okay? How come it's not spreading as much, yet football is being played? Does it mean we need to change our thinking around football? Does it mean that in Zimbabwe we can get the game going again at an organized level? Because all the theories around the spread of the coronavirus don't seem to actually stand up to the test when people are playing football and are assembling at the different football grounds around the country. And then think to themselves that Dynamos, Highlanders, Caps United, to some extent FC Platinum, those are the teams that you were thinking, hang on, that's where we're going to be dealing with big crowds, with large crowds. A game between Chicken Inn and Bulawayo Chiefs, for example, is going to attract all of 200 people, half of which are probably stewards and security personnel in the stadium. So can football not be brought back in one form or the other? Can't teams get back to training immediately? Because there seems to be very little risk.
Right, Chris, fine. That's the Premier League that Mike is talking about. And that's organized football, that's professional football. They do that for a living, same as Division 1. Who do these people belong to, these social footballers? Because, now.
It's a little bit tricky.
Who governs that level of football? Because clearly they've decided to organize themselves, and their games are, because somebody's phoning the other person, somebody's got a referee in the there's a center man, there's possibly even linesmen who are running the line, affiliated to ZiFM in some cases. So whose people are these?
Very, very simple answer, and it's because they're called the mother body. They're called the mother body because all of these affiliates, whether you're affiliated or not, if you play football in the four borders of this country, ZIFA is exactly who should be taking a look at some of these things and saying, you know what, we should be regulating. Instead, what they're doing is taking an approach where they say, oh, we're going to start stamping our authority and trying to stop the game, instead of coming up with a plan around the game. ZIFA, whether they want to be held responsible or not, should absolutely be held responsible for this, because it's football. Any football being played in this country, obviously, ZIFA is exactly where, is the door at which we lay the blame.
Mike, the same ZIFA that in black and white has distanced itself from these activities and said, we don't know these people, we're not responsible for them, they're not ours.
Because they don't want the responsibility, Barry, that comes. Responsibility comes with you then needing to take action. It comes with you then needing to make a plan. It comes sometimes with you needing to make a financial investment. Zvakafanana nemwana handitika pakauya pachinzi vamanandi pakutamba hujaya hwenyu kwakazoita mwana parusape handitika.
Mike, are you going to announce that on national radio, really, brother?
So listen, so that child, Barry, is your responsibility. And the responsibility also means that you have to cater for the upkeep of that child. There are issues that come into play: school fees, clothes, foods, the usual expenses that come with any child. But what ZiFA is looking and saying, you know what, this problem child here called social soccer, it's just too messed up and so disorganized, we don't want to get involved in it. And so that's why they're saying, you know what, we don't recognize you, but yet government is saying, hang on, according to our regulations as government, there should be no football getting played, because according to the health advice that we are receiving, football is a high risk sport. And therefore, when they've turned up the heat on ZiFA have now said to the police, right, arrest them all. Let's find out who's sanctioning these games. Let's find out the sports clubs that are involved, instead of them taking a deeper look into this situation and coming up with proactive solutions that not only please government, but also satisfy the needs of football.
This word disorganization keeps coming out, and yet this is the one sphere or tier of football that continues to play. So perhaps they are far more organized than we give them credit for being, the social football guys. And in truth, when the authorities cannot organize, chances are that vacuum will be filled by whoever can organize. Yes. And it looks like the social football guys have decided to step into that breach, haven't they, Chris?
They have stepped into that breach, and basically the football has returned. They have chosen to return football to the streets.
Football is back.
Football is back. It's happening whether the authorities want it to happen or not. They've basically taken a position where if there is no movement, then obviously someone is going to step into the breach there and ensure that football does come back. We've got lots of interested parties, and I wish that our authorities would take a look at this and make better decisions around it.
I want to talk now about Project Restart, Mike, in England. We saw Project Restart before football came back throughout the lockdown, the global lockdown. Project Restart kept communicating with its affiliates, including Sunday League, which is the equivalent of our Bruisers football, almost on a weekly basis. And then as football came closer to getting back, they were communicating nearly on a 3-day period, and then it became 24 hours. There's been a dearth of communication coming out of our football authorities, hasn't there? Because we haven't heard anything, not a peep in terms of the return of football in any shape or form.
Well, if leagues like Division 2 are asking questions, Barry, what of our Bruisers leagues? What of our social football leagues? They've got no chance. They've got no hope in hell. And the reason why in England, in the United Kingdom, they're having these conversations is that they realize that the base of the pyramid is the lifeblood of football. There seems to be none of that realization in Zimbabwe. We seem to pay all our attention to the very top of the pyramid. That's why all the conversations we're having are around the Premier Soccer League. They're around the Warriors and those 2 AFCON qualifiers versus Algeria. Very little is being talked about the systems and the structures that feed into the Premier Soccer League and then feed into the Warriors. And that's why football finds itself in this shambles.
Mike, do we even have a football pyramid? Do we even have a football pyramid?
We have it in name, Barry, because if we did have a football pyramid, that was part of the thinking at the association at 53 Livingston Avenue, that was recognized by Felton Kamambo and his cohorts, then they would have a plan for it, because it would be in their thinking, it would be in their planning, and it will be something that they're having conversations around. One of the accusations that has been thrown around our Project Restart is that they've been very little in the way of consultation at any level whatsoever. the solutions have been very prescriptive from ZiFA. ZiFA saying, right, we have come up with this plan. We want you to do this. They haven't consulted with people from the very bottom of the pyramid all the way up to find out what's good for football, what's best for you.
If we don't have a football pyramid and ZiFA has been doing what they are doing, what sort of advice are they giving to the Ministry of Sports, Arts and Recreation, Chris? And what sort of advice and discussions are they having with the SRC? Because this is 2 weeks now since we heard from the Minister, Kirsty Coventry, who handed over a proposal to ZiFA. They were supposed to get back to her within the week. We've waited 2 weeks. There's nothing. Are we not in danger of losing the initiative? Because Malawi in a couple of weeks' time, and then Algeria in another 4 weeks.
We could entirely lose the initiative. And I think the fact that the communication in terms of information coming or a sort of direction or wanting to get a restart going, that push and impetus came from the SRC. They decided, you know what, this is the plan that we can work with. They've handed it over to ZiFA. The fact that the information flow is going in that direction should already tell you that the people who are running our football are not thinking on their feet. They're not thinking about a plan. They're not necessarily working, because it should be the other way around. ZiFA should be going to present plans to the SRC to say, what do we do? But I think there was a recognition that there's almost an unwillingness to get football back. So I think that we're working with people who don't necessarily have the information, or if they do have the information, they're not willing to act on it. And consequently, the communication that they're having with the SRC is likely that they're actually being led.
And therefore, given that the SRC is supposed to give the green light, obviously they're the arm of government that's supposed to rubber stamp football being played in the country. These social football activities, Mike, do they help or hinder the cause of football?
It depends which way you look at it, because right now it looks like ZiFA are not keen on them. Government is not willing to support them. But guys are out there. They want to play football. And it's important that we get football going again. It's good for the psyche of the nation. And when we talk about the psyche of the nation, there are a lot more people who play social football than play professional football. There are a lot more people that play social football than we find in Division 1 or the Premier League combined. So when we talk about bringing back joy to the nation, when we talk about putting smiles on the people of our faces, this is it. Get people back playing football at Zimbabwe grounds. That's what's important. In Hatcliffe, in Kambuzuma, in Mufakose, in Norton, in Chegutu. Get those people playing football, because there are more people that are coming to social football matches than are attending Premier Soccer League matches over the course of a weekend.
But
there's football being played.
But Chris, they'll spread corona.
They would have spread it, Barry, by now.
Exactly. By now we would have seen surges of people who play social football who would have gotten coronavirus. We would have seen it. Thing about coronavirus is you can't hide it. You can't hide the number of people who are sick. You can't hide death. We would have seen it by now.
Let's just put a provisor to this show. None of the individuals on the show today have participated in the lockdown games that are taking place underground. We don't know where they've been happening. We have been locked in our houses and being good citizens. But nonetheless, I think there is a lesson to be learned here. Number one being that ZiFA superintends over all football. Am I right, guys? That ZiFA has got to look after 100%. the social football game as well as the professional game. It's got to be a football pyramid. And then the second thing is that where people are outside of the law, like the social games, there may be, just maybe, a lesson that we can all learn from it that might help in getting our game back on track. After all, COVID is here to stay. Those are our 5 cents worth. What's yours? Let us know on social media at ZiFM Sport. Coming up, play of the day.
Hi, my name is Rudoni Shamba. My Toria's Super Striker. You're listening to ZiFM Sport.